3 lives, 3 worlds, Lotus steps. Wherever step goes, Lotus blooms. Divine prayer. Lotus Step Chapter 21, Book 2. It was a long night and Qingyu had insomnia. She didn't come back to her senses all night. She sat cross-legged on the bed and slept all night because she is now a busy girl who has to learn both painting and more nukin, and she has no time to idle away if she doesn't ask for leave, so she sent Li Xiang to ask for leave due to illness with her 2 masters. Unexpectedly, this matter was quickly reported to the emperor, and the palace immediately sent an imperial doctor to diagnose the illness. Of course, nothing was wrong. The emperor was shocked that she had been put into solitary confinement for skipping classes last month, and she dared to pretend to be sick and skip class this month. She was really brave. He admired her and put her in solitary confinement for another 7 days. Nothing major happened during the confinement, except that Liao Xiuzhan from the Hanlin Academy came to Shawala to get the peace note that Qingyu had promised him. Liao Xiuzhan dressed up elegantly and wanted to see Qingyu again. Unfortunately, he only sat on the first floor of Shirhua building for a while and saw some flowers in bloom, as well as Qingyu, who came out with a calligraphy sheet. Maidservant. To be fair, Li Xiang felt that Qingyu had calmed down a lot this time during the confinement. She faced 3 times the usual amount of schoolwork without a single complaint. Not only that, after dinner every day, she would sit on the observation deck on the 7th floor and play the matukin. Pulled until midnight. This made everyone worse than death, but it couldn't stop her from being so eager to learn, so she hid wherever she could. For example, Zhu Jin took the opportunity to take Yao Huang and Zi Yutan and ran away to Zhuangzi in the suburbs to hide, leaving nothing behind. Li Xian, a personal maid, faced the bleak life in the 10-flower tower. After 7 days of confinement, Dr. Li came to see Qingyu within 2 days. As soon as he walked into the Shirhua building, he was stunned by the sonorous and powerful sound of her matukin. He tremblingly handed a few packets of cakes to Li Xiang's hands and covered them. He ran away with his ears covered. Miss Qi and Prince Ji also came to see her the next day. Miss Qi and Prince Ji are indeed martial arts practitioners, and their concentration and endurance far exceed that of Dr. Li. She sat there playing the piano without any distractions, and a pair of heroic sons and daughters actually stayed with her to sit with her for a song or 2, and even gossiped with her at every opportunity. The only thing that could be considered important was the news brought by Prince Ji. While Chu Shuiyuan was accompanying him, Prince Ji and his father, Prince Ji, heard that the emperor had appointed Zhao Wenguan, the right minister who also served as a scholar at Zhao Wenguan, to compile a set of literary classics and historical treatises compiled by the ancients. He was very yearning for it. Prince Ji felt that their southwest was a cultural desert and that his son had learned nothing at all in the southwest. Compared with Prince Wang and son Gongzi in the capital, he was almost semi-literate. He wanted Prince Ji to receive some influence in Pinyin City, the source of cultural heritage, so before leaving he begged the emperor to let Prince Ji stay in the capital, study classical literature with the scholars at Zhaowen Hall, and receive instruction for a few years. The emperor agreed. Therefore, although Prince Ji had already embarked on his way back to Lichuan some time ago, Prince Ji would remain in the capital. In order to show his grace, the emperor specially granted Ji Shizhi to live in the Shirwang mansion where no king currently lives, and became a neighbor on the same street as Qingyu. Because of the family background, Ji Shizhi said a few words, and Qingyu and Miss Qi understood that this was not something that King Lichuan wanted to do to cultivate his son through the cultural background of the capital. The barbarians from the southwest all returned, and the great event was accomplished. The emperor was very happy, and he was kind to the Ji family. He ordered the commander of the Lichuan palace to supervise the 16 barbarian tribes, and also gave him an iron certificate to seal the pill. The emperor showed such great kindness and granted such great power. It was hard to say whether it was a test or a trust. Therefore, the essence of the matter was that the cautious King Lichuan used an excuse to keep his favorite son in the capital as a pledge. Just show your loyalty to the Cheng dynasty. Prince Ji and Miss Qi were talking to each other, while Qingyu was standing aside in a daze with her chin propped up. Miss Chi noticed that she was distracted and called her 3 times before she said, in a daze. Miss Chi frowned and asked her what was wrong, but she answered absent-mindedly that it was nothing. Soon Li Xiang was about to move a particularly large flower tree in the yard into the building and asked Prince Ji for help. In the flower hall where they were left alone, Miss Chi asked Qingyu again what happened. This time Qingyu was silent for a long time and hesitated. I have a friend. She encountered something recently. Miss Chi's journey into the world is not just a day or two. She knows very well that stories that start with, I have a friend and something happened to her, are generally things that happened to her. Miss Chi calmly said, oh, and pretended to be calm. I wonder what kind of trouble this friend of yours has encountered? She coughed covertly. Maybe we can help her analyze it if you tell her. Qingyu lowered his eyes and was silent for a while. She also has a friend. This friend is several years older than her. She clasped the bow awkwardly with her fingers. Well, she has always regarded him as her brother, but one day. He suddenly stuttered at this point. She didn't know whether it was because of her stuttering or something else, but her face turned red all of a sudden, probably because she noticed the red heat. She seemed to be embarrassed and angry because of the embarrassment and said in a dull voice, forget it. It's nothing. He picked up the bow again and started practicing. Although Miss Chi is not very clever in matters of love between men and women, she is not stupid after all. After hearing this, she immediately understood that Chengyu's few words were actually talking about her and Lian San. Miss Chi was a little surprised, and just as she was about to ask again, a male voice from the door beat her to it. One day, what happened? What did he do to you? The low voice contained sullenness. It was actually Ji Mingfeng who had left and returned. Ji Mingfeng's return obviously surprised Qingyu. She stayed for a while, frowned and coughed. It's not me, it's my friend's story. She changed the subject uncomfortably. Ji Shixi is not helping Li. Has Sister Xiang moved the flower pots? Ji Mingfeng frowned and did not answer her. Li Xiang suddenly felt that the pot of flowers should be allowed to do at night, so he did not need his help. He just changed the sentence and asked again. So what happened that day? What did he do to your friend? Qingyu lowered his head and fiddled with his piano bow. What happened that day was just a matter of saying a few words to Miss Chi. It was impossible for her to talk about this with a man. It's nothing, she said slowly, trying to end the topic. It's not a big deal, Prince Ji. Please don't ask anymore. Ji Mingfeng was quiet for a moment. After a moment of silence, he took a step closer to her. If you don't want to tell, then I'll take a bold guess. He was expressionless. What you were saying just now is that your friend, she always regarded that person as her brother, but one day, that person ignored her wishes and interrupted her, right? Her shocked look obviously gave him an excellent answer to his guess. Not needing her answer, he took another step closer and looked down at her, his eyes dark. What do you want to ask? I want to ask him what he thinks of your friend. And your friend has never. How should I treat him after this, huh? Qingyu has been troubled by what happened that night for so many days, and these two questions are indeed the most confusing in his heart. She didn't expect that Prince Ji would be able to guess her unfinished words, let alone that he would be able to hit her hard on this matter. She was so shocked that she couldn't help but ask, how did you know? Prince Ji pursed his lips with an ugly expression and did not answer her. She waited for a while, but when Prince Ji still didn't answer her, she vaguely helped him make amends. Oh, you know everything because you were married, right? After a moment of hesitation, she put aside her scruples and asked sincerely. The two people in front of them said, then what do you think, my friend? How should I treat her friend in the future? Miss Chi felt that the amount of information so far was too rich, and she was digesting it. When Chengyu said that Ji Mingfeng had been married, she couldn't help but was shocked again and looked at the Crown Prince Ji subtly. The Crown Prince has been married. Ji Shixi's dark eyes showed a layer of shock and anger, and he looked at Chengyu. Have I ever been married? His eyebrows almost nodded. Who told you that I have been married? Chengyu was stunned. In the last few days at Lichuan Palace last year, she did hear the servants say that Miss Qin was about to marry into the palace, and this time Ji Mingfeng did bring Qin Sume into the capital. She remembered how many months when she and Qin Sume met again at Dr. Li's hospital, she called her Mrs. Ji, and Qin Sume didn't say that she called her wrong. Chang Yu was confused. Didn't Qin Sume, Miss Qin, marry into your palace last year? Ji Mingfeng categorically said, I didn't marry her. Oh, if you're not married, then you're taking her as a concubine. She nodded, that's good too. She wanted to end the topic, but she heard Ji Mingfeng say gloomily, I'm not married, and I've taken a wife as a concubine. Concubine, if we talk about the royal family's happy events last year, there was only one, which was that Qin Sume's cousin married Ji Mingchen. Chang Yu was stunned for a moment. Really? It turns out that the eldest son is getting married. Congratulations to the eldest son. Ji Mingfeng looked at her deeply and said nothing. Chang Yu intuitively felt that this was not the answer Ji Mingfeng wanted to hear, but she just wanted to end this inexplicable topic quickly. The three of them quickly got down to business, so they did not explore Ji Mingfeng's reaction anymore, but just asked again. So what do you think, my friend? How should she treat her brother, her friend in the future? Ji Mingfeng seemed to be suffocating, tilted his head to the side, and said coldly, I don't know. Miss Qi glanced at Ji Mingfeng and Chang Yu with a clear look, but she was really useless at this kind of thing, so she could only confess, I don't really understand this kind of thing, either. But she made a suggestion. Why don't you ask Xiaohua sometime? Chang Yu was greatly disappointed. Xiaohua knew her very well, but Xiaohua was confused. She wanted to find a sincere person and asked her to be a military advisor. What good advice could she give her? Ji Shixi suddenly asked her, what about you? How do you want your friends to treat that man from now on? It was precisely because I couldn't think of it and was very confused that I wanted to ask others. Chang Yu held her piano bow and said, I don't know. She thought for a while and asked Prince Ji, generally speaking, when everyone encounters the situation, how will you react if something happens? Ji Mingfeng looked at her and said slowly, I will be disgusted. His lips tightened into a straight line. I will be disgusted with that man. He added. This answer made Chang Yu a little stunned. After a while, she replied slowly, there is no need to be disgusted. If you don't hate it, what about hating it? Chang Yu recalled that night. She had been shocked, confused, afraid, and perhaps had many other unspeakable emotions, but she really never thought of being disgusted or disgusted. But generally speaking, when encountering something like this, your first reaction is to hate it? She frowned. Then, do I have to hate it? She retorted weakly, there's no need to hate it. As he raised his head, he saw Ji Mingfeng staring at her with a cold expression. When he met her gaze, he suddenly closed his eyes and then turned around as if he couldn't bear it. She asked with some confusion, Prince Ji, what's wrong with you? She saw him turning his back to her and raising his hand to rub his forehead. After a long time, his voice became hoarse. I'm feeling a little unwell, so I'll take my leave now. Sanyuan Street is the only way to go back to Chifu from Shawalu. There is a tavern on the corner of Sanyuan Street. The owner of the tavern, Xie Qinyang, operates on a small budget and only entertains regular customers. Miss Ji is a regular customer of this tavern, and she once brought Prince Ji here for a drink. At dusk, Miss Ji left Shawalu and passed by the tavern when she was spotted by Xie Qinyang, who was working as a waiter. Xie Qinyang hurriedly ran out to greet her, saying that the young man she brought here came here for a drink last time and asked for a jar of strong liquor in her restaurant. He drank 6 jars and 18 bowls in one drink. He didn't look like he was planning to stop. The young man was wearing a sword, and they were so cold that they didn't dare to dissuade him, but if he continued to drink like this, he might be killed. She had just sent her maid to look for her in Qi Mansion, but she didn't expect to meet her on the street and begged her to take her friend back. Miss Qi walked up to the 2nd floor and walked into a pavilion near the stairs. She saw Ji Mingfeng leaning against the window, holding a pot of drunken wine. There were indeed several wine jars scattered on the square elm table in front of her. Miss Chi naturally understood why Ji Mingfeng got drunk here, but she didn't know how to persuade him to do this. After watching for a while, Miss Chi sighed and sat down, peeling peanuts and drinking tea, thinking about spending some time with this frustrated man. Ji Shitzi drank quietly for a moment, turned his head and glanced at Miss Chi, and suddenly asked her, "After I left, Ayu and Miss Chi chatted in your boudoir about some private things about your little daughter. They should be less restrained than when I was here. Did she tell her, do you have anything else to do?" After he left, they did have some small talk among themselves, but it shouldn't be considered a private conversation with the youngest daughter. Miss Chi regards herself as a military daughter. She, the military daughter, has recently been obsessed with improving fireballs and can't help herself. Although Chang Yu is not as obsessed with this as she is, she still likes such dangerous things. Therefore, after Ji Mingfeng left, in order to refresh Cheng Yu, Miss Chi shared with her the newly designed bamboo fire harrier, and also exploded several fire harriers in the barrier set up by Li Xiang to show her. Ji Shitzi asked her if Cheng Yu had told her anything else. Cheng Yu had told her that by replacing the pebbles in the bamboo kite with iron slag, the power of the gunpowder blast should be even greater. But she didn't quite think that Ji Shitzi wanted to. What you need to hear is this. She asked Prince Ji cautiously, "For example, what does the Crown Prince think Ayu should say to me?" Prince Ji looked out the window and said calmly, "For example, she might tell you that she finally discovered that she actually likes Lian San." Miss Chi was stuck for a while and saw that Prince Ji looked depressed. It was hard to say that they had not talked about anything else just now, but about making gunpowder. At the same time, she was also very surprised. She didn't know why Ji Mingfeng was so pessimistic. After thinking for a while, she said, "I really can't see that Ayu likes the prince." This sentence was obviously very heartbreaking, and Ji Mingfeng gave her a complicated look. Miss Chi calmed down, "But you can't tell that Ayu likes the general. She treats you two, one as her friend and the other as her brother. She treats the general a little bit special." Well, but it can be seen that Miss Chi's understanding of herself is very accurate. She really does not understand Yu Hua in this matter. It is obvious that Prince Ji has been stabbed by her again, but Miss Chi did not notice it and just proposed it sincerely. "A suggestion. From what I see, Ayu is not very enlightened yet, so you and the general have the same chance. I think instead of getting drunk here, you might as well take this opportunity to let Ayu know your thoughts." "You, what do you think?" Ji Shitzi said lightly. "Even you can see how special she is to Lian San, so there is nothing more to say." Miss Chi vaguely felt that this sentence was not right, and whether she was being underestimated, but she had no time to think carefully. Thinking, Ji Mingfeng continued, "I interrupted her 3 times. But she was not angry, just a little confused and annoyed. I can't say how much I know she understands her, but I also understand what this means to her. I don't understand. Maybe it's just her. Ji Mingfeng always talks little, but after drinking, he can talk more." Miss Chi thought about it and felt that what he said made some sense. Ji Mingfeng drank half a jar of wine and said again, "It's not that I don't want her to know my feelings, but now I don't have the qualifications to tell her, nor do I have the opportunity." Miss Chi couldn't help but encourage a grown man to see him so depressed. "Maybe you can give it a try?" But Ji Mingfeng didn't seem to hear it. He just sat on his knees by the window with the wine jar, looking at the moon that had just appeared in the night sky, as if he was a little dazed. After a while, he seemed to have some interesting conversation again, and whispered, "Last year, Ayu was pestering me for a while, but I insisted on pushing her away. Someone told me that if I pushed her away, one day I will regret it, but I don't care." After a long time, he laughed and said, "She is right. I regret it every day, regret it and regret it." Miss Chi looked up at him and saw that he had closed his eyes. There was no hurt expression on his face, but there was a lot of pain in his voice. Miss Chi also looked at the moon in the sky, thinking that Ji Mingfeng had told her so many things that were on his mind, so it was obvious that he was drunk. If he were sober, he would never say these words to her. Ji Mingfeng was never a person willing to show weakness, and these words sounded so pitiful. She sighed, feeling that it was time to lead him out and return him to the 10 kings. After that night at the general's mansion, Tianbu was able to see Qingyu again on September 28th, the Qianning Festival. Qianning Festival is today's Qingyun's birthday. On this day, every household will have a feast around the fire, and there will be fireworks to watch at night. The rules in the court are even greater. Early in the morning, the Right Prime Minister, who is the head of the civil service, and the general, who is the head of the military attaché, will lead the civil and military officials of the 7th rank and above to the national temple in Deotai Mountain to worship gods and Buddhas and pray for the emperor, and then return to the palace to serve birthday wine to the emperor, then watch the vaudeville show rehearsed for a month by the Jiafeng Division under the Ministry of Ceremonies. In the evening, stay in the Imperial Garden to enjoy the lanterns with the emperor. In short, the program arrangement is very rich. Tianbu met Qingyu outside the Buddhist scripture pavilion of the Gua Temple. Not long ago, Master Huixing, the abbot of Gua Temple, got the Buddha's 37 sutras, by chance, which has been lost for nearly 1,000 years. He didn't know whether it was a true sutra or an apocryphal sutra. He always wanted to ask Lian San to help identify it. Therefore, when the prayers for blessings were finished today, Tianbu waited on Lian San and stayed with monk Huixing in the sutra pavilion for a while and a half. As a result, when he stepped out of the sutra pavilion, he immediately saw Qingyu, dressed in a princess robe, standing quietly under the old ginkgo tree in front of him, looking up at the crown of the tree. This ginkgo tree in the National Temple is nearly 1,000 years old. The trunk must be surrounded by several people, and the crown is as huge as a kuanping. In the winter season, the leaves are falling one after another, as if there is a layer of golden carpet under the tree. It is indeed a sight to behold. Value. The blue sky, the golden trees, and the girl in green clothes are all pure and vivid colors. In addition, the ancient trees are quiet and the girl is stunning, which makes it a rare beauty. Lian San apparently also saw Qingyu. Tianbu noticed that although he did not stop, the moment he saw Qingyu, his footsteps clearly paused. Monk Huixing was leading the way, heading towards the ginkgo tree. The approaching footsteps made the girl turn her head. When he saw clearly who was coming, a frightened expression appeared on his face that was rarely made up, and he turned his back almost immediately. The maid next to her glanced at them in confusion, then lowered her head and said something to her, but saw her shaking her head. At the same time, she actually ran out with her skirt in a hurry, stumbling when she stepped out of the threshold. He took a step and almost fell down, as if he was running away from some ferocious beast. Tianbu's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately remembered that after she sent Qingyu back to Shawala that night, she had asked Lian San how she would treat the princess if she came to look for him again. At that time, she said 3 times in a row that Qingyu would never come again. Although Lian Song said this, Tianbu actually didn't believe it. Ever since he entered Yuanji Palace as an errand, he had seen many beauties named Tianbu who wanted to enter Yuanji Palace. However, Tianbu had never seen a beauty who was attracted by His Highness, but tried every means to reject her. Of course, she has never seen Lian San take the initiative to fall in love with anyone. But after that, as Lian San said, the little princess never came to the general's mansion again. Based on today's situation, it seems that after the matter was revealed, the princess not only rejected His Highness's wishes, but was also very afraid and disgusted. They were born under the water god who was perfect and arrogant at the bottom of the sea. He didn't care about the world. He was the only one who could find fault with others. When would anyone dare to find fault with him? Who is qualified to find fault with him? But Qingyu actually dared. How dare she do this for such a mortal? Tianbu felt that he had gained so much experience, and for a moment he simply didn't dare to look at Lian San's expression. On the other side, Monk Huixing recognized her because Qingyu had been following the Emperor Tai Tai to worship Buddha in the temple all the year round. When he saw her leaving in a hurry, he was afraid that something would happen to her, so he sued Lian San and wanted to follow her. Only then did Tianbu dare to look at Lian San again and saw that he nodded expressionlessly without saying anything. After Monk Huixing left, he continued to walk leisurely for a while and came to the foot of the ginkgo tree. But he stopped. He stood where Qingyu had stood just now, looked up at the tall and huge tree crown with a cold expression, looked at it for a while, and then left the courtyard gate of the Sutra Pavilion without saying a word. Tianbu only felt that since Qingyu appeared, Lian San was extremely cold and distant. Perhaps it was Qingyu's fear that made him angry. Tianbu instinctively felt that he didn't like Qingyu's fear, and maybe he was very disappointed with it, but everything was just her guess. All we know is that there was no smile on His Highness's face that whole day, and he frowned occasionally, as if he was thinking about something. Tianbu didn't know what he was thinking. After all, it was the emperor's birthday celebration. Since he came back from the national temple, the clan and all the officials gathered in the palace today. On weekdays, the chance of meeting people who are rarely encountered by him has increased a lot on this occasion. Therefore, that night in the palace at the Lantern Festival in the royal garden, they met Qingyu again. At that time, Tianbu was accompanying Lian San through the lantern-lined path to meet the imperial master Su Ji in the octagonal pavilion in front. Lian San's picky and idle waiters couldn't please him, so he only came and went with Tianbu. But when there is a need to stay in the palace, it is obviously inappropriate to bring a maid with him. At this time, Tianbu will dress up as a servant or a servant to serve him closely according to the situation. She didn't know how many times Tian entered the palace. She knew most of the officials in the court, so when she stepped onto the lantern path, she recognized the man who was standing in front of a group of crane lanterns and chatting with Chengyu, compiled by Liao Peiying at the Hanlin Academy. Liao Peiying was an aloof and talented man. Tianbu had met him several times, and he had the impression that he was a lonely young man who only exchanged pleasantries with his colleagues in a perfunctory manner. But today's Liao Xiuzan made Tianbu look at him with admiration. Although he was a little far away, he could still tell that Liao Kaizi's tongue was shining like a lotus flower, and his enthusiastic and radiant face was very different from the coffin face in his impression. Seeing a smile on Chengyu's face again, she seemed a little surprised as she didn't know what Liao Xiuzan said. She raised her hand and gently covered her lips. Her fingers were slender and white, but the fingertips were stained with crimson coating. Because such a person and such a hand made such a movement, it made the movement look a little innocent and a little squeamish, which suited her very well. Even though she was surprised, her eyebrows were curved and her smile did not diminish. She was obviously quite happy chatting with Liao Peiying. She probably felt someone walking towards them. She raised her eyes casually, and when she saw it was them, her face immediately turned pale. But this time she didn't run away immediately. She just stood there helplessly with a white face, looking left and right. As they approached, she finally focused on Lian San, but with obvious panic and bewilderment, as if she was afraid that he would approach, but she forced herself to accept his approach. When they were only 10 feet away from each other, Tianbu heard Chengyu call out, "Brother Lian San," very softly, and his face that had faded away from blood slowly turned red with this low call. Although the low voice was as thin as a gnat, Tianbu naturally understood that Lian San had heard it. But he didn't stop, as if he didn't see her, he walked past her expressionlessly. Liao Xiuzan was about to salute him, but he was a little confused when he saw this situation. He asked Chengyu in a low voice from behind, "The general is in an emergency. Didn't you see the princess and the ministers?" Tianbu couldn't hide his surprise and hesitated. Suddenly, seeing that Lian San had been left behind, he had no choice but to follow him quickly. Tianbu couldn't help but glance at Lian San and saw that his face was cold and solemn, which was his usual expression in recent days. She quietly turned back and glanced at Chengyu, only to see that the little girl whose face had suddenly turned red due to Lian San's sudden approach had turned pale again, and there seemed to be something dim in her eyes. The shadows of flowers are lonely in the night, just like the shadows of lamps. She stood blankly in the light and shadow of the lanterns. Liao Peiying said another word to her, but she seemed not to hear it. She just stared at their backs. blankly, as if she didn't know what happened. About 10 days after the Qianing festival, Hua Feiwu heard shocking news from the Madame Su of Linling Pavilion. The young master said that he came out of the world again and hired Qin Jinyang, the red card of Mengxianle. Jiao Niang is good at dancing. When she wakes up, the young master indulges in the joy of dancing. When he is drunk, he lies down on the lap of the beauty. He wakes up drunk and wakes up again. He spends a lot of money on Jiao Niang, which makes him very unhappy. It should be noted that in the eyes of outsiders, since young master Yu dropped 9,000 silver on Hua Feiwu when he was 12 years old and turned himself into a legend in the fireworks field, he has become indifferent to the matter of fawning over girls and has devoted himself to it instead. He couldn't pull out the Kuju games, and only occasionally went to Linling Pavilion to find Hua Feiwu to accompany him. Therefore, they felt that young master Yu could be regarded as a semi-retired person among the Wuling boys in Qinluchu Pavilion. But Mother Su, the madam of Linling Pavilion, doesn't think so. Mother Su has always had high hopes for Qingyu and firmly believed that he could go further and further down the road of being a prodigal son. Therefore, she always asked Hua Feiwuxia to win over young Master Yu and try to get him to come to Linling Pavilion every day to make money. She never expected that Hua Feiwu could not do the thing of keeping young Master Yu in a brothel every day, but let Qin Jianyang of Mengxian Tower do it. You can imagine the anger in Su's mother's heart. Hua Feiwu was very curious about this. She knew that Qinyu was liberated from confinement, but she also heard that her schoolwork was still very heavy. With Zhu Hibiscus watching and heavy schoolwork pressing down on her, Chengyu could still take the time to marry a girl. Hua Feiwu couldn't help but respect her, but then she thought about it. Young Master Yu is actually a girl, and Qin Jiao Niang is also a girl. Even if a girl marries another girl, what can she do? Hua Feiwu decided to go to Shihua Tower to check it out in person. As a result, we arrived at Shiwalu, just in time for the Dongchuang incident. It is said that Zhu Jin heard that Chengyu had a girl in a brothel and was so shocked that he was half angry to death. And Zhu Jin knew very well that for a talent like Qingyu, who might have spent half of her 16 years in confinement would obviously not be able to do anything to her. She was so dejected that she waved her hand and sent her away directly. She was locked in a quiet room and forced to kneel. She was told that her knees were swollen and her body was sore. It might help her remember a little longer. When Hua Feiwu entered the quiet room, she saw Chengyu kneeling straight on the cold marble floor. She couldn't bear it and went upstairs to steal a soft cushion for her. Chengyu knelt down on the cushion obediently, glanced outside, and saw that no one was watching, and leaned on the cushion to talk to Hua Feiwu. Unlike Miss Qi, Xiaohua is stupid, but she is one of the best people in the world who can chat for a while. She asked about Qin Jinyang in just a few sentences. Oh, Chengyu frowned and replied to her, I just want to see what it would be like if a person really likes another person. She paused and suddenly sighed with a bit of vicissitudes of life. Before, I am a little doubtful that there is someone who likes me. She used to be with Xiaohua, and the main topic was chatting about secret affairs in the boudoir. Therefore, she felt more relaxed about talking about what happened to her recently in front of Xiaohua than in front of Miss Qi. Too much. Xiaohua's face was full of surprise. So you hired Qin Jianyang to see if that person would be jealous? Before Qingyu could answer, Xiaohua said calmly, Oh, this is a good method. Usually we have to test whether a person likes us. This is what we did when we were together. If the person being tested likes us, of course he will be stimulated and jealous. After analyzing this, Xiaohua finally felt something was wrong. That's not right, Xiaohua said. Logically speaking, if you want to make the other person jealous, shouldn't you have to marry a man? I don't know what she thought of. Xiaohua's face suddenly turned blue, and then she covered her mouth in shock. You suspect that Miss Qi likes you. You actually like her a little bit. That's why you married Qin Jinyang, such a beauty. Do you want to stimulate Miss Qi? Xiaohua couldn't hold herself up and slid down the chair to the ground, muttering, Oh my God. Chengyu was even more shocked than she was. Xiao Qi and I are innocent. After thinking for a while, he nervously added, Jiao Niang and I are also innocent. Chang Yu quickly explained. Jiao Niang is in love with a scholar. Recently, she is raising money to help herself redeem herself. She wants to stay and fly with the scholar. I will take the scholar with me when I go to Jiao Niang. Her logic sounded clear to her. Very carefully, then the scholar likes Jiao Niang, doesn't he? I just want to see how they get along with each other. Compare it with Lian. Well, how I get along with someone can tell if he likes me. I thought so. Xiaohua, who was worried about becoming a jade lily, breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't realize there was any problem with this logic for a moment. She sat on the chair again and asked with concern, "Then you spent so much money and observed for so long. What do you think? Does that person like you?" He saw that Cheng Yu was suddenly absent-minded. After a while, he said with a strange expression, "Did you know that if Jiao Niang glances at the scholar shyly, the scholar will blush? If he talks to Jiao Niang more, he will still be shy. He also stutters." Xiaohua stammered. I am like this too. I will do the same when I see someone I like." Cheng Yu looked like he had seen a ghost. He was quiet for a moment and said dully, "So that person doesn't like me at all, because he will neither blush nor be shy when he sees me." Hua Feiwu, who had all her emotional experience from storybooks, felt that blushing was an extremely important thing, so she exaggeratedly covered her mouth like a person who had experienced thousands of experiences, and told Cheng Yu categorically, "Yes, if you really like someone, how can you not blush when you see him?" She looked at Cheng Yu in disbelief. "That person doesn't even blush when he sees you. Why do you think he might like you?" "You are so stupid, so stupid." "Yes," Xiaohua said sadly, "Flower Master, you are such a silly girl." Cheng Yu was stunned for a moment, silent for a long time, and struggled to prove that she was not a stupid girl, "But he kissed me." But Xiaohua, who had been having fun for many years, was not moved at all. She shook her head disapprovingly and expressed a point of view with strong economic and philosophical implications. Have you ever heard a sentence? It is said that gold and silver are not currencies by nature. But currency is naturally gold and silver. The same goes for men. If he likes you, he will naturally kiss you, but when he kisses you, he does not naturally like you. As he spoke, a glimmer of wisdom appeared on his face. Chen Yu was completely shocked and said dryly, "If he doesn't like me, then why did he kiss me?" The little flower waved her hand and answered fluently, "Of course it's because you look good." Cheng Yu couldn't refute after thinking about it. He knelt down on the soft cushion and was stunned for a long time. His face was full of decadence, and his eyes fell into the void. Xiaohua, who said she was tired, poured herself a cup of tea and then poured a cup for Cheng Yu. She finally remembered to get angry and said angrily, "But this person is so brave. He even dares to take advantage of the flower owner. I really owe him. Teach him a lesson," asked Cheng Yu Dao. "Has Zhu Hibiscus taught him a lesson on behalf of the flower owner?" He eagerly said, "If not, why don't I teach him a lesson on behalf of the flower owner?" Cheng Yu weakly replied to her, "No need," glanced at her and said, "You can't beat him." Hua Feiwu was very unconvinced. Which kind of god is this that I can't beat? Cheng Yu was silent for a while. "Lian-san." Hua Feiwu took a sip of tea and said, "Oh, you can't beat me." Then Hua Feiwu reacted once, twice, then his hand shook and the teacup fell. Cheng Yu, who was in a state of confusion, instinctively knelt back a step. Hua Feiwu was so shocked that his orchid fingers curled up, and he pointed at Cheng Yu and said, "What the flower master means is that General Lian kissed you, right?" Cheng Yu carefully wiped the tea that spilled on her skirt with a handkerchief and said dully, "Well, I know, you are right. Gold and silver are naturally currencies, but currency is not gold and silver, so I don't naturally like him when he kisses me. It's just that I'm good-looking." She was silent for a moment. He often visited brothels, including Lin Lang Pavilion, Quailve Garden, and Shichuan Courtyard. It should be Jian Menghe who had kissed you and also the Shichuan Courtyard. It's almost Jin Sanyang from Green Garden. In fact, it doesn't have any special meaning. It's all because I think too much. She nodded and said decadently, "I understand." Hua Feiwu couldn't help but correct, It's gold and silver, naturally not currency, but currency is naturally gold and silver. And even the general has never kissed me. Hua Feiwu was so hit by this gossip that she still didn't react, but he held Cheng Yu's shoulders excitedly. Since General Lien kissed the flower owner, you can think more about the flower owner. He must be because he likes you. Trust me, it's true. Cheng Yu slowly looked at her and narrowed his eyes slightly. You're not saying that gold and silver are naturally not currencies, but currencies are naturally gold and silver. If a man likes you, he will naturally kiss you, but if a man kisses you, but don't they naturally like you? Hua Feiwu admired Cheng Yu's memory, but this was not the time to praise her. She pointed out a finger and shook it slightly. This is true for ordinary men, but for men with misophobia, this theorem is not true. Yes, you have to know General Lien, Xiaohua said mysteriously. He is a germaphobe, the real deal. Lien San loves cleanliness and Cheng Yu knows it. She still remembered that when they first met, Lien San clearly stepped into the small pavilion where she was from the muddy wilderness, but there was no stain on his pair of white boots. Although she didn't know how he did it, she also remembered her. I was very impressed at that time. Later, I was lucky enough to see him fight twice in succession, especially the time he killed a giant python in Zayatayatai Mountain. The whole cave was covered in blood and filth, but he was still able to stand on a clean ground without stains. Air calmly rolled up his sleeves, which also left an indelible impression on Cheng Yu. Therefore, she felt that maybe Lien San was indeed picky about cleanliness, but when it came to the level of misophobia, Cheng Yu suddenly remembered that night in the general's mansion when Lien San pushed her down beside the hot spring pool without any explanation and pressed her down. The sudden memory made Cheng Yu's face flush suddenly, but it was this uncontrollable memory that made her doubt Xiaohua's words. Because if Lien San was really a germaphobe, could he still be so careless and just press her to the ground and act haphazardly? Of course not. He must carefully lay a clean blanket on the ground before pushing her down to live up to his reputation as a misophobic. Xiaohua didn't notice Cheng Yu's thinking, nor the suspicious look in her eyes after thinking, and vowed, because General Lien is such a misophobia, he has always hated other people's touch, let alone take the initiative to kiss a woman. It is not allowed to take the initiative to approach a woman within 7 feet. Cheng Yu became even more suspicious. That's nonsense. As far as I know, Yanlan, and Sister Tianbu have all been within 7 feet of him. Xiaohua's thinking was different. She nodded. He didn't hit you even though he was 7 feet away. This shows that he treats you very differently. Cheng Yu thought from the bottom of her heart that Xiaohua was talking nonsense. She rubbed her forehead and said, "It's outrageous to say that Brother Lien San hates being touched by others. If I remember correctly, he is a frequent visitor to brothels." She raised a thought-provoking question. If he really hates girls being near him, then why is he visiting brothels? This was also the first time Cheng Yu remembered Lien San after treating him as a man instead of a brother, and realized that Lien San was a playboy who often visited brothels. If he is her brother, of course there is no problem, but if this problem is a bit too big. Cheng Yu was stunned. Xiaohua didn't notice the change in her expression, and replied unnaturally, "Why does General Lien visit the brothel?" "That's a good question." She hesitated for a moment, then coughed. "Originally, I didn't want to tell you, Lord Flower." "Yes." She looked into the distance with a solemn expression, because after all, we Oirans also want to save face. She retracted her gaze and glanced at Cheng Yu. "But the flower owner, you are my flower owner after all. Since you are the flower owner, your marriage, then I want to help you," she said decisively and firmly. "I want to bring you together." Cheng Yu heard that the mountains were covered with mist. Xiaohua, who had made up her mind, first confirmed the fact that Lien San often visited the brothel. General Lien is indeed a frequent visitor to our fireworks place. It can be said that after you, the flower owner, General Lien is the most valued by our Mother Su in Linling Pavilion. Guest. Cheng Yu didn't know what to say for a moment. Recalling the past, Xiaohua has mixed feelings. The general is indeed a wealthy man who spends a lot of money, and he has lived up to his mother's expectations of him. It is said that he once stayed in Kuailuyuan for 3 nights in a row and doted on the peep of fairy Jin Sonying. They also said he was fascinated by the beauty of Miss Jian Meng from the Shichun courtyard, and once gave Jian Meng a Xiaoyan jade snake knotted sword spike as a token of love. They also said that General Lian admired my singing voice, and one day he missed the morning court while wandering around Linling Pavilion. Xiaohua paused. Even the general did stay at Jin Sonyang's place for 3 nights, and gave Jian Ming a sword spike because I missed the morning. Hiss. The soft cushion under her body was torn open by Qingyu. She squinted her eyes and looked at Xiaohua calmly. Are you sure you are here to bring us together, not to hinder my marriage? Sons? Xiaohua gasped, but she gave Qingyu a don't be so anxious look. I spent a lot of effort to inquire about the time when General Lian stayed at Jin Sonyang's place. I heard that it was during that time that General in my spare time, I composed a pipa piece and asked Jin Sonyang to learn it and play it for him. Xiaohua eloquently said, that piece of music is very difficult. The day Sonyang learned it, she happily sent someone to the general's house to invite him. The general went to Kuailuyuan, but after listening to it, he thought it was some crappy thing. Out of anger, he stayed in Kuailuyuan and supervised Jin Sonyang to practice again for 3 days according to the instructions he gave. Sonyang only slept for 2 hours a day and practiced day and night for 3 days. All 10 of her fingers were covered in blood. It was all blood. 3 days later, the magic was finally accomplished and the performance was performed again. The general was slightly satisfied and let poor Jin Sonyang go. Xiaohua was still frightened and solemnly concluded, this is the story of General Lian staying in Kuailu Garden for 3 nights and doting on Jin Sonyang. Qingyu. Xiaohua gave Qingyu a comforting expression. Don't be afraid. The next story about Meng Jian is not that bloody. Miss Jian Meng, you're a good sword dance performer. Half of the talented people in the world have written poems about her sword dance. Xiaohua gestured. Let's talk about the time when the general went to the Shichuan Academy and asked her to dance the sword dance. She danced so well it is her famous work. Jianghong departs. Jian Meng holds a light dusty soft sword and wears a snow-white gauze skirt. Her figure is graceful and graceful. When the drums are beating, Jian Meng dances with her small sword, like the flowing wind returning to the snow, and it was like the shadow of a startled dragon. But after dancing for a few moves, the general stopped and frowned, saying that the bright red tassel of the light dust sword did not match the rhythm of the drumbeat. Xiaohua looked blank. The general asked everyone to stop there first, and asked the maids around him to braid 17 sword tassels with different colors and braiding methods. Then he ordered the musicians to play drums and asked Jian Meng to make each sword tassel. The sword tassels were tried side by side for 2 hours, and finally a brown snake knot sword tassel was selected for Jian Meng to put on, and then she was allowed to return to the stage and officially perform the dance. Xiaohua looked at Qingyu. The most exquisite sword dance only pays attention to whether the type of sword chosen matches the type of dance. I have never heard that the color of the sword tassel needs to match the rhythm of the drum. Xiaohua couldn't say enough, although I also liked General Lian last spring. Sometimes, I really feel that he is sick. Qingyu felt that last spring she was still in love with General Lian, and this autumn she was already in love with a monk's little flower. In fact, she was not qualified to judge whether Lian San was sick. And since I visited a brothel just to have hot pot with an oiran, I was not qualified to judge whether Lian San was sick. But after hearing all this, she actually understood why Lian San was acting like this. Lian San, after all, is a picky Lian San. He is picky about everything. Qingyu leaned on the mat and coughed, trying to explain to Lian San, after all, the highest achievements in Pinyin City's music and dance arts are all in your 4 major flower buildings. Brother Lian San is very demanding and makes demands at every turn. You are probably reperforming just so that you can enjoy the singing and dancing that meets his expectations. She remembered that Lian San had asked her if she could dance and sing, and once again confirmed an idea. She sat upright solemnly, folded her arms and frowned. I think he really loves the art of singing and dancing. After a moment of silence, Shi tilted his head to one side and said, "Hell, I'm not good at any of these. What I know best is the Matukin. So should I learn it?" Xiaohua immediately threatened her. "No, if you know how to do it, he will torture you just like he tortured us." Xiaohua's face showed an expression of surviving a disaster, and she even shuddered. "I will stay with General Lian. The longest time he had to listen to it was when he came to ask me to sing a song early one morning. As a result, I failed to sing a few parts well. He frowned and asked me to change it over and over again. I sang it over 15 times before he was satisfied." 15 times. Xiaohua looked complicated. This is how the rumor that he missed the morning meeting for me came about. After hearing that Xiaohua had clarified Lian San's romantic reputation, Chengyu felt relieved and couldn't help but curl up the corners of her mouth. She knelt down and rubbed her nose, then pressed the corners of her mouth down with her knuckles and said, "Oh." Hua Feiwu was still immersed in her own world and seriously told Chenyu, "You really can't tell the second person what I said to you, the flower master, today." Xiaohua had a bitter look on her face. "Let people know that General Lian, such a good man, has ordered us so many times, but has never touched us at all. We have no way to behave as human beings. We don't have to kill ourselves with 3 feet of white silk, or we will jump into the Bayou River." Xiaohua was about to cry. "Did you know, the world's requirements for us courtesans are very strict." Chengyu, yeah. After Xiaohua left, Chengyu recalled today's conversation with Xiaohua. She was not in a good mood at first, so she didn't talk much, but even so, she felt that the conversation with Xiaohua was lively and happy. Xiaohua is just a show by herself. She is such a little drama queen. Although the little drama queen is as unreliable as usual, she forgets her original intention as she talks, and before she leaves, she doesn't remember that the 3,000 words she said today are to help Chenyu solve her emotional problems. But just such an unstructured speech made Chengyu, who had been restless for nearly 20 days, suddenly become enlightened. Chenyu felt that he had realized something. Lian San, he does like himself. The experience of enlightenment is very fresh, like the clouds suddenly opening, and the sky and the earth are covered with moonlight, making people's eyes clear and deep in their hearts. It is also like a sudden downpour falling in the suffocating airwaves, making people feel wet from head to toe. Hearty and refreshing. She felt that now she understood the matter that had troubled her for so many days. Why did Lian San avoid her before? Maybe it's because he likes her, but she always treats him as a brother, which makes him angry, so he doesn't want her to know. Him? Since he didn't want her to know, why did he kiss her again that night? Maybe it's hard to hide someone you like. Since he couldn't help kissing her, why did he tell her to stay away from him and stay away from maybe the confusion and fear she showed at that time made him think that she couldn't accept him, and he spoke out of frustration. Chengyu asked and answered himself for a moment. The more he thought about it, the more confident he became, and the more he felt that this was what happened. He couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth again. She liked this explanation, liked the logic, and liked the answers hidden among the doubts that troubled her. Because in the past 20 days of spying and exploring herself, she understood more and more day by day that she liked Lian San. She's not stupid, she just has never liked someone before, so she doesn't know what it's like to like someone. But that day Ji Mingfeng told her that of course girls should feel disgusted when they are rudely assaulted by men, but no matter how many times she recalled that night with Lian Song, when the initial panic receded like a mist, she felt it again and again in her memories. However, when she was just panicked and shy, she was vaguely aware of it and somewhat understood what she was thinking. She hired Qin Zhenyang to find out what it was like for someone to truly like another person. She wanted to know Lian Song's feelings for her, but she also wanted to know what her persistence and dependence on Lian Song should be called. She told Xiaohua that the little scholar whom Jiao Niang was fond of would blush shyly every time he saw Jiao Niang, so that was probably because he liked him. She even knew without any knowledge that when Jiao Niang's loving eyes glanced over at her, the blushing little scholar must be as heartbroken as a drum. Because during the Lantern Festival on the night of Qianing Festival, she looked like that for 3 consecutive times. That night, in the light and shadow of the lanterns, her heart was like a drum. She was at a loss for his approach, but she was also looking forward to his approach. She could also feel her cheeks turning crimson little by little due to shyness. And when he passed her without squinting, the feeling of falling into an ice cave was not just due to loss. Now she finally understood that she liked Lian San. She was just a little stupid and slow. She should have known why Lian San was so special to her and why she wanted to be his unique one. She implied liked him and wanted to monopolize him. How stupid can she be to think that she has a good relationship with Lian San and that she has a deep love for him as a brother and sister? She and Chang'an, who is related to her by blood, may not necessarily be so deeply in love. She and Lian San were supposed to be a loving couple, but because of her stupidity and slowness, they had such a big misunderstanding. Cheng Yu rushed out of Shihua building while putting on his shoes. Li Xiang happened to come out of the main hall. Seeing this situation, he instinctively followed him to stop him. "Princess, you haven't finished your punishment of kneeling. Where are you going now?" But her clever little princess has already walked away. "I can't care anymore. I have to go and tell Brother Lian San that we are actually a couple made in heaven." Li Xiang. End of Lotus Step Chapter 21. Book 2. By Tangqi. English translated using Google.